Hey folks, welcome to Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. It's Brooke McGowan here at the bunker. I want to welcome our guests today. We have JC and KrisAnne Hall. Thank you for visiting us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love the bunker.
This is the bunker. That's right, the OTU bunker. So we're doing a lot of great stuff here, and we've launched a media site. You may have heard from Porter, OTU Media. And what we're really trying to do is get the truth out to Oklahomans and anybody else who wants to listen. We have a national audience.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about mostly here is truth, because going against the mainstream media is difficult. You know, they have their own narrative. We found it with ourselves when we would have reporters come to us and interview us during the petition drive, that they would shift our narrative. They would kind of manipulate it on the nightly news. And so it was difficult to get over that din when you don't have your own bullhorn. So we've launched our own bullhorn.
Yay!
OTU Media. Yep, that's right. So thank you for coming. And I know you're in Oklahoma because you're teaching and you travel across the country teaching. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an attorney, although I don't practice law anymore. I was a prosecutor in the state of Florida for nearly a decade, and I practiced constitutional law, First Amendment law in specific, for several years. And then the sort of long story made really short is I was working for the state of Florida and on my spare time teaching the Constitution, and my boss, who was a Florida elected official, didn't like how I was teaching the Constitution or who I was teaching it to, and he said to teach that the Constitution demands limited government was an ethical conflict of interest for me as an employee of the government. So,
Statist. I hear statist.
Well, so he didn't want me to speak to right-wing fringe groups, which were...
his definition, I'm sure.
Well, which included the middle school children of our community, because I taught middle school kids about the First Amendment. I taught local community groups. I taught the local school board because of my First Amendment practice experience. So apparently those would also qualify as right-wing fringe groups to him. And he gave me in email a cease and desist command.
Wow.
And I simply explained to him, you didn't give me my right to freedom of speech. I'm doing this on my own time. I'm not spending your money to do it. I'm not talking about my job, so you cannot silence me on my own time.
Was this employer of yours, was he calling himself a Republican?
No.
Okay.
No, he was not. As a matter of fact, he would probably start shuddering at that thought of idea.
Yeah.
But I told him, I said, you didn't give me my rights, and I'm not going to trade them to you for my paycheck. Yeah. And so he fired me, and that was 2010. Mm-hmm. And from that day forward, this is what we've been doing. I have, for the last 7 years, averaged about 260 classes in over 22 states every single year.
Wow.
We are rolling back that pace. It just got to be too much for the family and for health and all that stuff, but we are still on the road. We are still teaching. And now we have, I don't know if you can see this, now we have a radio show that is nationally syndicated, globally heard. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me when we do this. We have the analytics that tell us who's clicking on the link and who's listening to the show. Right. I have 13 people in Germany that as soon as the show is published, bam, they've got it. We've spread to the Netherlands. We've always had a really strong following in the UK, even before the radio show, because we teach a history of liberty that takes us back before the Constitution, which incorporates British legal history in it. And so I've had many people from the UK contact me and tell me that we teach more British history than the British citizens receive in their school systems.
Right.
And so we have a following there, and teaching middle school, high school, college, adult groups, civic groups, state legislators. Taught the state legislators of 10 states.
Great.
And we're always expanding to more. And this week has been amazing. I taught at Christian Heritage Academy. Mm-hmm. I taught at Oklahoma Wesleyan. Mm-hmm. And this next 2 days, I'll be teaching at Oklahoma Christian University.
Wow. Fantastic.
So amazing reach to the young people.
Excellent.
So encouraging to us.
Right.
Because we are seeing a massive revolution of the mind happening in our college campuses and in our churches. College students getting the understanding that freedom of speech does not equate to the picking of speech.
Yes.
Right? So I am free to, you're not free to from offense.
Right.
I am free to offend.
Yes.
Because the First Amendment was there to protect speech, and popular speech does not need protection.
Right.
We don't need government defining what is good and bad speak, because the next thing you know, you got government defining bad speech as the speech that comes against them, that challenges them, and then you're back to sedition laws, you're back to kingdom, you're back to the Star Courts, and that's not where we want to be.
So you got helicopters at the bunker too. That's amazing.
They're probably
we're
here
safe.
for me.
We're
probably
safe.
here for me. That's okay.
A whole brigade.
I know.
So in recent years, we've watched Ben Shapiro and Milo Yiannopoulos and Steven Crowder and Laura Ingraham and many conservative speakers come on college campuses and get the pushback, just like you're talking about, in Berkeley and in other colleges, University of California, Missouri. Are you receiving any pushback?
I think that our pushback is a little bit more covert.
Okay.
We've had groups, because I'm on the Southern Poverty list of anti-government extremist hate groups.
You're a hater.
Right, which is interesting because the fact is that they have 997 groups and me. I am the only individual by name on the group who is not a CEO, president, or whatever of a group, a national group. And
Now you're a group.
And now I'm a group. The interesting thing is this year, so 4 years in a row, we've been on their anti-government extremist hate list, which is ironic because I teach the Constitution, which created government, and I teach the proper function of government, not a hating government. So according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, if you preach that people should have inherent rights, that government should be limited in their authority, and that government should not have the power to oppress in the name of popular opinion, then you hate government, right? So if you love liberty and you love people and you love your neighbor, you hate government, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. But this year they did something really crazy. So we started publicizing that we were the only individual in the group, because the Southern Poverty Law Center's written policy is we don't identify individuals, we only identify groups. So I'm bringing to light that they're
There's
not
your
only
name.
hypocritical in their policies, but in their practice as well, right? And so this year, they actually created a group and put me on the list twice. Now we have me on the list, and this completely fabricated group that they made up assigned me as the leader of this group in order to have me on the group twice and to hide their hypocrisy.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's awesome. So I may not be a threat in the mind of Berkeley. I may not be a threat in the mind of other universities enough for them to make a big, hoopla over me. But apparently I'm enough threat to a national group like the Southern Poverty Law Center that they have to make up stuff and put me on the list twice.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I what's interesting to me in light of that, the protests and the hecklers and these guys, KrisAnne teaches, as I listen to her, she teaches basically everything in a historical context. So here's the history. And so really in what she presents, it's the history that speaks and teaches the lesson.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
As opposed to some of these guys, and I really like them, but it's usually their sort of apologetic, their opinion, their view that they're formulating and giving out.
In a very political perspective.
Yeah, so it's really difficult. This is what we found, because we've actually had, I'll just call them hecklers, come in to meetings with the intent to find something to cause a stir about.
Sure.
And we've watched them sit through the whole meeting and go, and then walk out because they didn't find anything that they could attack, because it's here are the principles of liberty and this is for everybody's benefit. And so I think that's one of the reasons we don't see that sort of full frontal assault, because as KrisAnne says, it's not my opinion. I'm speaking on behalf of the founders. I'm speaking on behalf of the people who lived it, who built it. and just sharing their words and sharing their principles.
Well, now I understand why you're hated or on the
Right,
hate list, because
right.
they've been trying to revise history
Yeah.
for decades in the United States.
Well, what's interesting is that when you bring this history to the forefront, and I teach almost exclusively via PowerPoint, so that way the people who are in our classes can actually see the history. So they can't attribute it to me. Nobody can walk away from one of my classes and say, well, KrisAnne Hall said. They're going to have to say, this history said, this document said, this person said. So if you're disagreeing with what I teach, you're not disagreeing with me, right? You're disagreeing with the history and the people who lived that history and spoke about that history, because we deal exclusively with original source content. So we don't teach what other historians say about history. We teach what those who lived it. And the interesting thing about the whole heckler thing is we have a strict principled policy. We are liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over personality, which incidentally puts me on the negative of both political sides quite often, because we're straight down the middle, not as a centrist, but as a principled stand. So one minute I'm calling out Trump for something that he's doing unconstitutional, and I'm a never Trumper, and then the next time I'm calling out Trump for doing something right, and then I'm a sycophant. And so I'm on either side. And when you present this history and the hecklers come, because they'll come from the right and the left.
Yes, sure.
Because the right wants to trap me, and the left wants to trap me. And you start teaching this history in such a way that it cannot be disputed. They not only leave with that kind of thing that you did, but the wheels are turning. They're now internally conflicted, and they're not quite sure how to do that. So either they walk away and say nothing, or they resort to name calling. And I'm saying right and left. And what's interesting is most people who walk away from the lessons that we teach, whether they be hecklers, lovers, or haters, all walk away with a question in their mind. Why have we been denied this history for so long?
Yeah, right.
JC teaches a brand new class, an incredibly powerful class that is available on our libertyfirstuniversity.com, called More Than Victims, America's Black History. And he just taught it to a conference in Washington, D.C. of about 300 Black pastors.
Wow.
And they were blown away because there is so much history that is simply not taught. But you can see when you teach it that it has to be intentionally denied.
Yes.
In order to alienate an entire population of America. Let me give you an example, and I'll let him describe the class itself, but the power of the class too. I was teaching at Oklahoma Wesleyan, and after the class, I had a student come up to me, and he said, "I'm libertarian." He said, "I believe in the principles of liberty, and I'm trying to speak to my friends." He says, "But I have this friend, and she's Black, and I'm trying to teach her about the Constitution, and her statements are always to me, why should I care about a document that I am not a part of, a document that has been written to enslave me?" Now, here's the crazy thing. When you teach the history the way it really happened, you cannot believe that. That lie cannot be supported because the history that we're taught denies the existence of Black Americans who were property owners, who were business owners, men and women who were entrepreneurs, who were soldiers and fighters and heroes. Patriots who built America
prior to the Emancipation Proclamation.
Prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. So
yeah, that's the whole lesson in that presentation of More Than Victims. I mean, so the premise is you have this message out there. So if you walked up to a Black American and said, "Okay, what were you before Emancipation Proclamation? What were Black people before that?" I mean, the answer would be slaves, right? That would be the common answer.
Right.
So, and that's the message that I would say on the left is you're just a victim. You were nothing but slaves. You're oppressed. This history was against you. So therefore, let us save you.
Yes.
And you're still a victim today.
Yeah, so it's a victim message, right? Because of that, then the whole system's against you, blah, blah, blah. And now this is not a denial of oppression. It's not a denial of slavery. It's not saying none of that existed. But that's only part of the picture. And when you delete the side, like I said, I have probably 100 different examples. I call black founding fathers and mothers of America. I mean, think about, and it's interesting how she said, when you see how many examples, when you see the magnitude of this history, when you see what they did, who they were, you can't miss that by mistake. So it's it's intentionally concealed.
Revision.
So when you think of, if you said, okay, who was the first man to give his life for every American's liberty, right? Everybody should know that answer. But in light of the fact that it was a black man, Crispus Attucks, certainly black Americans should know that.
A black free
answer,
man.
right? And that's, nobody hardly knows his name. But it goes on from there. Benedict Arnold, everybody knows. What we don't know, George Washington, I think, characterized him as the best military leader on either side of the war. They called him a military genius. He was popular with American patriot troops. So a guy like that who goes over to the British side, that ought to be devastating to the American cause. But it wasn't. Why? Because of one man, a black patriot, James Armistead, essentially the first American spy, infiltrates Benedict Arnold's camp and gives intelligence information to Marquis de Lafayette and Washington so that Benedict Arnold was not successful. The Battle of Bunker Hill, Peter Salem, there's another black patriot credited with taking the shot that killed the opposing British general that threw those forces in disarray that caused them so many losses. On and on and on, you have people like that. We know Paul Revere, right? Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Because of Longfellow's poem, we have this image of Paul Revere by himself. There's another black patriot.
Who, by the way, was not riding through the towns yelling, the British are coming.
Because he's British.
Paul Revere was British. Everybody was British at that time.
But a black patriot, Wentworth Cheswell, made that midnight ride. He went north to New Hampshire. Wentworth Cheswell, by the way, was also the first black elected official in the United States, 1770.
Wow. And that wasn't the United States at that time.
Excuse me, in America. He was the first black mayor, 1770. He was Justice of the Peace before that. His father was a wealthy home builder who built the home of John Paul Jones, father of the American Navy, famous home you can go see. But he became wealthy, being this home builder, was able to send Wentworth to get really great education. These were all black Americans prior to Emancipation Proclamation. We've got restaurateurs, one of the wealthiest men in New York City, a female black real estate mogul who actually sued to get some property back in court in Rhode Island and won, right? I mean, we're taught, black people were considered property. These are property owners, and here she was in the court system suing to get her property back. Right. And so on and on. There are tons of these things. And I was able to deliver this message to this group. I've done it twice now so far. We're getting on DVD and trying to make some resources available. Yeah. But just blew these guys away. And they realize, the power of this, and they realize the manipulation. When you can basically sever black America from their history, and the realization that from the very beginning you helped make this nation great, you helped build this nation. Definitely. When you sever them from that, and now they believe, as you heard this girl says, American history is against them. It's not my history. What do I have to do with that? So then you can make an entire generation hate their own country. Right. And so that's the power of it.
And here's the issue. Like JC said, this is not a denial of slavery. So you have to teach the whole history, right? Because if you just teach slavery, then you can perpetuate this lie that you are a helpless victim that needs a savior of the government. Mm-hmm. But if you teach the slavery and you teach the heroes at the same time, what you're actually teaching is you don't have to be a victim, because there are people who actually lived in the midst of slavery who overcame that, who were powerful, and not only powerful personally, but powerful politically and powerful in society. And you can be that person too. We have removed heroes, I mean real heroes, from our culture and replaced them with race pimps and political prostitutes like Jesse Jackson and what's his name? I forget. Al Sharpton.
But KrisAnne has a presentation about the women just like this, what she calls the founding mothers,
right?
You know, and talks about that. The whole presentation, the women and minorities. I mean, it's so pat and trite nonsense that you hear from the left all the time. This racism and misogyny and blah blah blah. The minorities and women, yes, there was oppression that we fought against, but from the very beginning, those groups participated in founding this nation, building this nation. So we built this really false image. All the women were just weak and oppressed, and you know, that's the power of it. What she was talking about when you look at this Black history, if you look at any of these individual stories, anybody who did what these people did, accomplished what they accomplished, would be heroes. How much more so that here these folks are in the midst of oppression and slavery, in spite of these circumstances, became powerful, influential, successful people, pioneers and forerunners. And you know, so the fact that we don't even teach them, that we don't even know them, is such, to me, a disgusting dishonor of who these people are and what they accomplished.
It's done by
on purpose. So let me put you on the spot and give you a pop quiz.
Yeah.
Right? So I know, right? Are we not allegedly living in a culture where we're supposed to be empowering women, lifting up women, celebrating the firsts of women?
That's the supposed
that's the
culture, right?
The line, right? Right? We are powerful. We are
breaking that glass ceiling, right?
I mean, can you name the first American woman playwright?
No, because she wasn't a lefty, so you're not allowed to know.
The first American woman historian. How about the first American woman political advisor? The interesting thing is she's all the same person.
Really?
Yes. Her name is Mercy Otis Warren. And she was a patriot during the time of our independence from Great Britain. She was an advisor to Washington, to Jefferson, to John Adams, to so many, Elbridge Gerry, so many of the men who were the driving wheels of our foundation. She was the first American woman playwright. She wrote Shakespearean-style plays in the form of satire. She was not oppressed. She was published. Her plays were performed. She was a recognized publisher. She wrote she's the first American woman historian. She wrote the very first history book about our independence. It's called The Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution. And she wrote it with such candor that she actually, because some people are like, well, she was one of those people, so obviously there's a bent to her history. Well, she wrote it with such candor that John Adams got angry when he read the book, and
which he was prone to do,
and sent her a scathing letter. Mercy Otis Warren was actually advising delegates to the ratification of the Constitution from the outside, looking in, and she wrote a paper of her dislike of the way the Constitution was written to deny. She was more of an anti-federalist, and she believed that the Constitution was written in such a way that although at the beginning the government would be limited and defined, but she saw a future over time of our federal government assuming more and more power and denying the power of the people through their states. And she wrote this letter that was published.
Wow.
And so what's interesting was she wrote with such clarity and authority. It was originally, the authorship was originally attributed to another man.
Typical.
and yeah. And so she was so brilliant, so well spoken, and so confident in who she was and the authority that she held, that they were like, whoa. And so she had to correct that error. No, it was me. But then nobody was really surprised because they knew Mercy, right? Because that's who she was.
Yeah, that sounds like her. That's
right?
kind of the reaction then.
How can we profess to be a culture of women, and I'll just leave the men out of it, right? How can we be profess to be a culture of women who celebrate the first of women and not even know her name?
And that's the aggravating part of it, the hypocrisy that we see every day.
It literally brings tears to my eyes. I mean, I'm heartbroken because Mercy is somebody that I want to meet when I get to heaven. I mean, she just, I'm speaking to all the time travelers out there. If you want to come pick me up, I'm ready to go. And I want to go back and talk to her, right? Because she is my inspiration.
So we should focus on her in some fashion. Dinesh D'Souza has done these excellent memoirs or excellent, documentaries of history up to today regarding the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, what's taken place in the United States. Do you guys have a plan to do something like that?
We were just talking about that, about the Black History presentation, little vignettes. And
in America and the women, we should do the same thing with the women too.
Yeah. Because to us, it's not attached to party. This is not a party thing. And I think that's part of the problem. We're so tribal, and you see this hypocrisy all the time. This side wants to have the market cornered on caring for whoever, and so you see this nonsense of we're the champions for Black America. We're the champions for women, and it's not so. The only voices that are accepted who are minorities or who are women is if you toe the ideological line. You see, if some woman steps forward and you don't bow to some sort of Marxist ideology, you're attacked, you're shamed, you're mocked. The same thing happens in the minority community.
And the same thing happens on the political right side. If you don't establish if you don't support establishment politics, if you're willing to criticize a Republican who is not following the principles of the Constitution, who's not following the principles of liberty, then you're attacked too.
You're some radical wingnut, right-wing extremist.
If I could just challenge, seriously, just challenge everybody out there. Like I said, for 8 years, I have been speaking in over 22 states, over 260 times per year.
Yes.
I have a waiting list of people waiting to get me to come and speak a year in advance.
Right.
I don't think that it's a factual thing, and I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging. I'm not all on the Rush Limbaugh thing to elevate myself, right? But
on loan from God.
Yeah, right. On loan from God. I think that it's safe to say that I am one of the most sought after teachers on the Constitution in the United States.
Right. Well, full disclosure, I've known of you for about 7 years now. You came to North Carolina when I was chaplain of Cabarrus County Republican Women. And then I met you I think at the White House, we did a speech on the White House.
Oh, you were there.
Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never been invited to speak. I've never been invited to speak at CPAC.
Oh, really?
I've never been invited to speak for Heritage. I've never been invited to speak for any of these typically establishment Republican things. And so, but I've never been invited to speak at whatever the Democrat version of CPAC is. I don't know what that is. Do they have one of those? I don't know. Why would they need them? They've got the whole public education system. So
and that's the thing, because if you stick to principle, then you're apt to go off script from partisanship, right? They want the partisan red meat.
Line. People always ask me, which party do you support? No, I am Washingtonian. Okay, so George Washington, in his farewell address, spent a great deal of time explaining how the tribalistic nature, he called it the spirit of partisanship, the spirit of factions would become the destruction of public liberty. Because what you have then, when you divide people into teams, he says what will happen is eventually one person on the team will rise to such a level of power that everybody underneath them will be suppressed and every idea will be oppressed unless it's that one person that's in power, you know? And you see that on both sides. And all I've ever asked of anybody, I actually spoke to a room full after Donald Trump became president, which has been very liberating for our opportunity to teach the Constitution to left sides, right? Sure. So after, because now all of a sudden they're concerned about the Constitution. After Donald Trump got elected president, I was actually invited to go speak to a whole room full of Bernie Sanders supporters, which is awesome to me. And so they left understanding, once again, that our message is not about politics. It's about principles and it's about liberty. And liberty is truly for everyone.
For everyone. I imagine they asked you a lot about the 25th Amendment, don't they?
Oh, no, not back. No.
Not yet.
See, here's the thing. When I'm brought, it's crazy. When I come in to teach, because we have been denied so much history, we've been deprived of so much truth. I go in and teach for about an hour and 20 minutes. People are left like, and I always tell people it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're left with this, oh my goodness, how have I missed so much? Right. And people their brains are turning and they're trying to connect the dots. So a lot of times I will open the floor for questions and people will just be like,
still trying to soak it in. What's astounding is, we live in a time where we have the greatest access to the most information in the history of the world, and we have probably the deepest ignorance that we have ever experienced in our life. It's really crazy.
I actually have a theory on that. I think because it's so easy to get information, we don't have to know anything.
Wow, true.
Right? Because
the Socratic method is long gone. We don't use that anymore.
Yeah, that's why sometimes people are a little blown back by my teacher. I'm a Socratic teacher, so that's how I work, because that's how my brain works. Sure. Everything is a question for me. So our son comes up to my husband and says, how do you spell this, right? Yeah. And he says, well, sound it out, figure it out. He says, no, I can just Google it. Right?
Well, you have to put it in there some way.
Yeah,
figure it out for Google.
But now Google will correct it. If you get close, you'll get to it.
You just put it next to your head and think really hard.
No.
Yeah, right?
Osmosis, right?
So here's the thing. Why do you have to know anything?
Yeah,
Why do you have to study anything? Why do you have to have anything stored in here when everything can be stored in here?
Isn't it crazy? I recognize
and what
that
happens when this is not available
20
anymore?
years ago or 30 years, whenever it was that math classes started allowing calculators, that was the beginning of our downhill slide of actually using our brains. Look at this face over here by my producer. And you want to go to a break in just a second? Guys, I'm feeding... yeah, that's right. See, we're in the bunker. We've got our own grenades. I'm visiting with KrisAnne Hall and her husband JC, and if you want to visit or you want to learn more about them, you can go to KrisAnneHall.com, the KrisAnne Hall Show. We're going to take a break real quickly and pay some bills, and we'll come right back with KrisAnne and JC.
Do you have problems with pain, anxiety, or sleeplessness? Come see us at Can Help Wellness, where we can help. Stop by any of our 4 wellness centers to find out how premium CBD products can help you find relief. From balms to tinctures to even products for your pets. Natural, safe, organic relief and lab tested with certifications. Reach out to one of our wellness consultants today at 405-455-3012 or online at cann-help.com.
I want to thank my guests today, KrisAnne and JC Hall. Thank you for coming today. So we've talked a lot about history and about your teaching methods and your travel across the country. Now that we're after the break, I'm going to talk a little bit more about current events. And the hottest current event lately has been definitely the rhetoric from the left, but also what's been taking place with Brett Kavanaugh, with now Justice Brett Kavanaugh. So here's my question for you.
You think that's what he was called in high school? The Brettster?
Yeah, maybe so.
Isn't Brett just such an 80s name?
It's such a elitist name.
such an
Every Brett I
80s
know
name.
went to
Well,
Ivy
even in the
League or
movies,
something. It's
Brett
true,
was the preppy pre-college
Well,
guy.
he fit that.
To his credit, I understand. I don't know in detail, but I understand his mother worked very hard for that to establish that elite status.
Yes, most definitely.
So
So I just want to bring it up to speed, and this is kind of in your wheelhouse a little bit. How did you feel about the 48 Democrat senators who basically broadcast that they were against now due process?
Not surprised. To be quite honest, not surprised.
But we're 2 votes away, actually, from having due process just be kind of eliminated in the country. Like, it's no big deal.
Well, you know what? I think we're closer than that.
Yeah.
I really do. I think because what you're seeing is 48 people, but what you're seeing is 48 states. Well, not 48. I guess it would probably be 24, whatever, how that works.
Okay.
So what you're seeing is the number of states who support these people, right? So you're seeing a bigger population of what's going on. And
we'll know that more clearly in a few weeks.
Yeah. November 7th?
But I think that we already have ample evidence of the condition of due process in America when people simply don't understand that accusations and the court of public opinion are not the same as the courtroom and a jury.
Right.
And we want to hold people accountable. We want to punish them based on simply opinion and hearsay and how what the accusations do to make us feel.
Right. Total lack of evidence, but yet I feel like you're attacking me because I've been assaulted, and if you don't go with listening to this woman who claims assault, you're attacking me. It's like a personal, became a personal thing.
You know, as I look at it, so just a slight modification of how we look at this. It's not a complete rejection of due process, right? It's tribalism again. It's my tribe trumps due process because, no pun intended, you look at what happened in the Kavanaugh
I hate
hearing.
that he stole that word from my language.
No, I can't use Trump.
I can't even use the word
his
Trump
name,
anymore.
people.
It's just
But you look at the assault on due process, correctly described. But then immediately after that thing was over, now you have other events pop up in the news, and the same people that were attacking Kavanaugh with just accusations are now writing their headlines saying, accused, they're defending their side against mere accusation. So the thing is, they like due process if you're in their tribe.
Totally.
And so that's
why it was really
that to me is something deeper and I think more disturbing than just saying, okay, we're just against due process at all. Because it just, like if they're, okay, we want to get rid of this out of the Constitution. That's pretty clear. It's this or that. But with this tribalism, it's arbitrariness. Like you don't know it's this way one day, it's this way the next. It depends on who you are. So we're actually rolling back to, Star Chamber, pre-America justice, where it's a matter of your status, who you know, who you are. If you're on our team, then we're going to protect you, and then we're going to prosecute this guy just because you say so. That, to me, is incredibly frightening.
Right. Well, it's hypocrisy on steroids. Juanita Broderick didn't get an FBI investigation.
Right.
Yeah, right. And not only that, it starts off from this idea of vengeance, political vengeance. Lindsey Graham said something after the Kavanaugh hearing, with the Kavanaugh Ford hearing, that really deeply disturbed me.
Lindsey Graham 2.0.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham 2.0. And his liberation from John McCain is really, he's very witty, very funny.
He's been set free or something.
I know, right?
Something's happened.
So Lindsey Graham said something that really, really concerned me. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you just watch out after this election. If we maintain the majority and I become the head of this judicial committee, we're going to do the same thing to you that you did to us.
I missed that. Wow.
And it's just scary. And it just proves the danger of democracy.
Okay.
right? Because America is not a democracy.
No.
America is a constitutional republic, and we don't want to be a democracy because democracy is an engine of vengeance, right? Because democracy means that there's always a majority and always a minority. And in a democracy, the majority always overrules the minority. They make all the laws by majority vote, make all the rules by majority vote, property ownership will be by majority vote, everything by majority vote, which means the minority groups will only have what the majority allows them to have. But the other thing, and the sad thing about teaching about political science and the definition of the terms pure democracy, and we think about majority and minority, instantly Americans have race that come in their mind. But the truth of the fact is majority and minority are not defined by skin color.
They're not fixed labels.
They're not fixed labels. And what happens is over history, when you have a pure democracy, yesterday's minority is now today's majority. And by human nature, people say, okay, well, you did this to me. Now I'm in power. I'm going to do this to you. And that's why James Madison and our founders knew, as Madison said, that pure democracies always go up in flames.
Sure.
He meant that most literally because pure democracies always end up in revolution because they're based on vengeance.
Right.
The constitutional republic gives equal representation in laws for minorities and majorities. We have proof in America that we are a constitutional republic and not a democracy. Rosa Parks is that proof.
Right.
Because if we were a democracy, the majority vote was against Rosa Parks, she would still be sitting in the back of the bus. Because in a democracy, minorities never have a society-changing voice. And so that's why we have to stick with due process, because it is equal application under the law. Democracy brings lynch mobs.
Yes, it drives me crazy when I hear people, I know you're not really driving that on one side of the aisle or the other. I happen to be on the right side, meaning the Republican side. I campaign for Republicans. I have the Republican flag on my wall. But so anytime you hear a Republican use the words "we're a democracy," I instantly know that is not a Republican.
Well, but you can't. It's hard to cast aspersions that way because we have been taught the wrong things for a long time.
Yes.
And most people don't understand that's an error. They don't understand why it's an error. And even in understanding that it's an error, they don't understand why it's dangerous. I mean, I've had people say, oh, well, it's just semantics.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's what I mean. Well, words have power. And it's not semantics.
Right.
It's the difference between liberty and slavery.
Absolutely.
And I am personally opposed to parties because I think that false divisions are the real divisions that we see are hard enough to get over, to create party divisions. But if you look at the Republican Party platform as it was written in 2016 is the last one, right?
The 66-page one?
Yeah. We are the party of the Constitution.
Yeah.
We are the party of limited government. We are the party of fiscal responsibility. We are the party of states' rights.
Yeah, if they actually followed the platform.
I know.
Right?
I agree.
You could get on board more often, but you can't claim that you're the party of the Constitution, of limited government, and of fiscal responsibility when once again a House, a Senate, and a President that are Republican create another expansive, overwhelming spending bill.
Yeah. I know.
That is, by the way, not even a budget. It's not even a budget. It's just a spending bill. We are operating unconstitutionally. We are operating to the destruction of our future. We are enslaving our children to a debt sentence. And we ought to be about shrinking government and restoring the constitutional principles instead of spending away our future of our children.
Do you feel like when President Trump said this will be the last omnibus I sign, do you feel like he was giving, a signal?
I hope so.
Got to break
I
this
sure
thing
hope
up?
so, but I heard that from my representative 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years ago,
We've been
right?
hearing it from ours,
And so
too.
then there's always some kind of excuse
Some
because
crisis.
They come up with this crisis and the government shutdown. I actually have an article on my website, KrisAnneHall.com, about, constitutionally speaking, who controls the budget and what happens if you have a government shutdown. And it's all a lie. It's all a shell game. There is no such thing as a government shutdown. And what's ironic is they'll say, well, we're not shutting down the whole government, right?
Yep.
We're just shutting
National
down
parks and
we're shutting down non-essentials.
Non-essentials.
Okay? So when you have a government by law is created to be a limited and defined government, how in the world do you have non-essential employees?
yeah, right.
Right? A limited and defined government should only be operating with essential employees.
Instead, we have 2 million federal employees within the District of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, the place is just
And how many
amazing.
are non-essential?
Non-essential, right?
Yeah.
So if you're
80%.
non-essential, if you're labeled as non-essential, okay, then your job is not a federal job.
Right.
Okay, your job by law is a state job. So people jump on me because you got to get rid of the EPA, you got to get rid of the Bureau of Land Management,
DOE.
you got to get rid of the Department of Education, you got to get rid of the FDA, the USDA, right? I'm not saying you eliminate the protections,
Right.
but you have to return those agencies to the state level where the people who are living in those states
Can control.
can
their government.
control their own government.
Right.
We have legislation without representation rampant in America because we have bureaucrats that have no relationship to the people on the land in which they're living, making laws, enforcing them on us. They don't give a flip about us.
No.
They don't care about our water. They don't care about our land. They don't care about our cattle. They don't care about anything. They care about power. They care about paychecks. They care about political avarice and greed. And that is evidenced by the fact that the EPA has created some of the largest man-made disasters
Yes.
in the most recent history.
Right.
Colorado,
Yes.
Flint water. Flint
Yes.
water was not a Michigan crisis. That was a federal EPA crisis.
Wow.
But they have buried that so they can't be held accountable.
Sure.
And so we have evidence after evidence after evidence. The National Forestry Service is not about protecting your forests. If they were about protecting your forests, they would employ a prescribed harvest and use of the forest trees and replenishing and of everything that falls on the floor. Instead, they seal it off and say nobody can get in, nobody can do anything.
Then you have these
Then you have all
nuclear level wildfires.
right because they
out
have
of
tearing
control.
up the
all
whole
because they have all this
West.
fuel. That's what the loggers call it. All this fuel laying
Sure.
on the ground, and the fires cannot be stopped.
Right.
So it's
Decimating communities all across.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
If you're really about sustainability, then and you're really about conservation, then you're really about stewardship.
Yes.
And we miss that stewardship application.
I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I always wonder when we look at this issue, where are the insurance companies
all right.
in this
Where do
scenario?
they sit? Exactly. Wow.
Well, the thing that was really eye-opening to me is I do a lot of teaching in the Northwest where the national forests really are. And because the federal government has consumed so much land that they're not entitled to have, it is literally against the law for federal parks and for the federal government to be expanding it like this. You want to be a steward, you want to have conservation, they have to be state parks. That's what the law says. And I'm not talking about Congress law. I'm talking about the supreme law of the land, right? So this stewardship needs to be returned to the people where the people actually live who care about their resources. And so what I found out from the people who live in these areas, their entire economy has been decimated. They cannot be stewards. They cannot use their natural resources in a responsible way to employ people to help the economy, to help America. And what happens is now we've decimated industries.
yeah.
What's happened now is we have created a dependence on the federal government. These people who were an active, productive part of our America now sit around and wait every year for forest fires so they can get FEMA checks
Oh my God.
to live.
Wow.
FEMA,
That's corrupt.
FEMA has become an industry. And it ought to be sickening to us. Absolutely sickening.
That's disgusting. So one last thing I want to talk to you quickly about, and something that's been talked about a lot since Donald Trump was elected, and that is the Electoral College. Because on the left, the liberals want to eradicate the Electoral College and move towards something called the National Popular Vote, NPV. So this is talked about on college campuses. This is talked about in all kinds of forums. Certainly Robert Reich is bringing it up all the time, and it's on my Facebook feed almost weekly. Talk to us from a Constitution standpoint why the Electoral College is so worthy of being protected.
Well, let me first direct you to my Liberty First University YouTube channel, okay?
Yeah.
So we have Liberty First University YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, there is a short video, I think it's less than 10 minutes, that teaches about the disenfranchising of voters, okay? So we need to understand that the national popular vote, the cry for one vote, one person, one vote, is not about expanding the rights of the people. It's actually about disenfranchising voters. The Electoral College, you have to follow the pattern, right? So first we have to recognize that we have two divisions in Congress. We have the House and the Senate. And that was because there were supposed to be two representative bodies, right? Two representative bodies. The House of Representatives represented the people. The House, the Senate represents the states, right? Now we have transformed all of that. We've transformed all that with the 17th Amendment.
Yeah.
But the president, and here's the key that we have to understand, the president is not a representative of the people. He was never supposed to be a representative of the people.
Right.
The president, the office of the executive branch, is a representative of the states in foreign affairs. That's who he is. He's a representative of the states in foreign affairs, and he's a representative of the states in the federal government. So that's why
we've upended everything.
Right. So here's what happens. So the Electoral College was designed to be the way that the states choose their national representative. It's sort of like the political conventions. You have a Democrat convention, you have a Republican convention to approve or choose the candidate you want to represent the party in the election. Well, the president is the governmental representative of the states. So the Electoral College is how the states choose their representative. It is based on states, not on popular votes. Now, there is a popular vote within the state that is meant to direct the electors on how they are voting to represent the people of the state. So the Electoral College is supposed to be a group of representatives who represent the voice of the people of the state, the ideologies of that state, the principles of that state, to choose a presidential candidate that best matches the ideology of the state. Our problem is because we have become a duopoly of politics. We no longer believe that the people are representative. The parties are representative, and the parties then direct the electors through legislative law to be loyal to whatever party gets the majority vote in the state. So it's become a political thing. The problem is not the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a very important safeguard for democracy, against democracy, for real representative government. The problem is the ignorance of the people that have allowed the Electoral College process to become corrupted and become tribalistic. One vote, one voice, one vote says that no one in America has a voice on who the president is unless you live in New York City, unless you live in LA, unless you live in Austin, or unless you live in Miami.
Right.
Okay, and that is not an exaggeration. Okay, so everybody else will not matter in an election. So it's not one vote, one voice. It's one city controls everything, right? Totally everything. And here's what happens in the election process then. Because this is the reality. I don't care what kind of propaganda they're saying, how they're fooling the people. This is the reality. When a presidential election comes around, There will be no campaigning anywhere but New York, LA, Miami, Austin, the big populated cities.
Why would they need to come to Oklahoma for only 7?
Right.
They don't have to.
So here's the thing then. When the president becomes president and Congress is delving out the funding to the states, they don't care what the states who don't have a vote, who don't have a voice, say about their spending practices, right? What they'll do is they'll lavish all the funding, all of the services on these individual
Major
cities
yeah.
so they can keep them happy and keep their votes.
Right.
The one way I think about it, you know, when you look at the history and the discussions, the framers recognized, you know, represent that people share a culture, you know, in an area. So the electoral vote is a vote of a people, not of a person, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about New York City,
Right.
oh, New York City should have more votes because more population. No, but it's a shared culture. When you think about that area, it's pretty much they kind of think the same and it represents that way. So when you talk about, when you make it not of a people, but of a person, so each individual, and you just count up numbers, that means that single culture of New York City will now dominate the entire state of New York. So nobody in upstate, which is almost like it is now, but nobody in upstate New York will have a voice. They don't have a say so. And then on a broader scale, that's what's going to happen, which is why they want it. Because the urban areas tend to lean left.
Totally.
And if you go to national popular vote, the non-left rural areas all throughout the nation will have zero voice.
Totally.
It will be done.
Right.
I have a correction to make. I actually, I have a video on electoral college training, but it's part of our Liberty First University courses.
Okay.
The article that I have that sort of summarizes the course at Liberty First University. The course at Liberty First University is called the Electoral College. That's the name of the course.
Video.
And we have a preview video for that. But the article that explains the purpose of the Electoral College and the danger of the national popular vote is actually an article at KrisAnneHall.com called Disenfranchising Voters.
Okay.
Okay, so the preview video for the Electoral College class is found at libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Okay.
And the article is found at KrisAnneHall.com called Disenfranchising the Voters.
Okay.
And so
Thank
that's,
you for that.
yeah, I wanted
Find
to
that.
make sure that I corrected myself. It's crazy. We travel so much, we teach so much, and our schedule is so crazy. I have memories of doing things,
Yeah.
but not where I put them.
Not sure where they're at yet.
Not sure where I put
So
them.
I used to listen to your podcast. Do you still have the app? Does
Yes,
Liberty still? Okay.
we still have the mobile app. We still have the
Good.
mobile app, but we are moving to SoundCloud.
Okay.
And so we may be losing the mobile app. Are we going to lose the mobile app? I'm not sure.
That remains to be seen.
That remains to be seen. So we may lose. But we are on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We
Great.
are in Google Music Play. We are in TuneIn.com. We have all of our podcasts we do Monday through Thursday, something that we call the KrisAnne Hall Daily Journal. And then we do the full show, which is 8 segments. And our terrestrial stations means it's 2 radio hours.
Okay. Wow.
And our daily show, Monday through Thursday, is only 1 radio hour.
Okay.
So podcast form, it comes out to be 38 minutes.
Wonderful.
So
Excellent.
Monday through Thursday, the Daily Journal. And then Saturday we have the regular show. And what we do, it's a lot of fun. And JC and I do it together. I used to do it all 6 years. I did it all by myself.
Right.
You get tired of looking at yourself, don't you? And talking to yourself for hours at a time.
That's awesome.
So it was
I
so
love
much fun.
talking to myself.
Yeah.
Well, you guys work really well together, and I can't wait to be watching that. You guys, I want to thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in. And real quickly before we run off, don't forget to visit KrisAnne Hall. That's with an E. KrisAnne, ANNE, Hall.com. We'll have that up here on our thing. But also I want to remind you that today is the launch of the very important film called Gosnell, the movie.
Yes, I saw that. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
You saw it at Cure.
We were at the Center for Urban Renewal National Policy Summit, and they previewed it there. It is so powerful.
Awesome to
You
hear.
definitely need to see it.
Great. I'm in it.
Oh,
You didn't
Are
see-
you
I'm,
really?
I'm an extra. I'm just no. But it was filmed here. It was filmed here in Oklahoma, and awesome films like that need to keep coming back to Oklahoma. We have to support the part of Hollywood, our friends, director Nick
Did you
Searcy.
get to meet the actors?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
man, the guy that played Gosnell he did it.
I didn't get to meet him. He wasn't there the day that we did our shoots.
Who was
but,
the guy?
He really
Dean?
creeps
It
you
was
out.
Dean
Yeah,
Cain.
Dean Cain.
Did you
is-
meet Dean Cain?
Oh yeah.
Is he a nice guy?
He's a wonderful guy.
Aw.
A wonderful guy.
he
But
looks like he's a nice guy.
He is a wonderful, and he's a conservative. He's really that's pretty cool.
It's powerful but disturbing. Like I don't know. It kind of motivates you, inspires you, angers you all at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's an absolute must see. Everybody should be able to agree on that
part, yeah.
issue.
It's the most. I mean, he was the most prolific serial killer in the United States, and it's the story that the press and Hollywood doesn't want you to see. Totally. So we're going to run the trailer real quickly before we say goodbye.
All right, listen up. We are looking for anything that looks like drugs or paraphernalia.
Philadelphia Police Department, we have a search warrant.
What is that smell? Man, you gotta see this. Is this normal?
I don't know. I've never been in an abortion clinic before. You are not going to believe what I saw last night.
How many?
So far, we found over 30 of them. Healthy woman goes into a clinic, comes out dead, and there's no police report?
Files have been moved recently.
Look at this.
You'll be the prosecutor who went after reproductive rights, and you'll be a racist to boot.
You've got a lot of folk who'd like to see abortion outlawed. And this is not going to be the case that gives them an excuse.
Prosecution has offered you a plea bargain, Dr. Gosnell.
Then I would have to admit I was guilty. I'm not guilty.
When you get to the courthouse, you are going to be swarmed by reporters.
You ready for this, counselor? Where's everybody?
When was the last time your division inspected Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
We had instructions directly from Governor Ridge's office not to inspect.
Wouldn't testify in that case about anything. You doubt you'll find a doctor who will.
And you look at the facts, you will see what I see.
An overly zealous Catholic investigator.
Is that what you want to make this about?
There's nothing that man did that protects women or children, and you don't have to be a pro-life activist to see that.
Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history.
You better win.
So, as you can see, this is a very important film. Oklahomans need to support it tomorrow or today, October 12th. It'll be in the theaters. Support it this weekend.
Should we bring our Kleenexes?
Most definitely need a tissue.
Yeah.
I watched it twice. So I saw it one night in Oklahoma City, the next night in Dallas. I still needed tissues the second time, even though I was already prepared for what was going to happen. Yeah, it's very worthy of. It's very worthy of our. We have to support things like this with our pocketbook because we have to send a message to Hollywood that says this is the kind of messaging we want. This is the kind of filming that we support. This is the kind of stories that we want told, especially when mainstream media is hiding them.
And Hollywood fought very hard against this. They
Still
had to
is.
go to the crowdfunding on
Yep.
Indigo. It ended up being the highest supported, crowdfunding thing ever.
Hat Tip Films is who ended up picking it up, and Nick Searcy is the director, an incredible guy out of Hollywood. He's actually stood in for Rush Limbaugh a time or two when
he was in the movie too. Was
yes, he played the attorney.
Right.
The bald attorney for Gosnell. It's worthy of seeing, guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us at Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite here at the Bunker with KrisAnne and JC Hall. Signing off now. Have a great weekend, guys.